Welcome to Get Over It, the consciousness transforming podcast for exceptional 21st century living. Folks, we have a health show today. We're going to be speaking with Clive Witham, and we're going to be talking about his newest book, Self-Healing with Chinese Medicine, a home guide to treating common ailments. And folks, he gives it all to you. This book is extremely informative. It's extremely engaging. It will help you walk through what you're going through and come out the other side feeling a whole lot better. I strongly, strongly suggest this book. Now, the information shared on Get Over It uses intuitive and pragmatic insight to help you shift your consciousness to break through blocks and release energy that is no longer needed. Yes, we're going to help you let go of the BS that's been holding you back. But you guys know I always ask, are you truly ready to? And by the way, folks, BS is belief system. A bit about me for my new listeners: intuitive since birth. I'm a third generation intuitive with over 3 decades of experience supporting people to break through the blocks along their path. I'm a strategist for personal and professional transformation, revealing cutting-edge information that enables you to prosper and thrive. I spent 25 successful years in corporate America as an executive sales professional, and I am the founder of Healing Visions Ministries and the Northern California Children's Education Network, a 501c3 nonprofit. I provide consultations and healings in all areas of life that heal the mind-body-spirit connection, allowing you to live your very best life. My clients tell me that I keep it real while providing them with accurate information to assist them along their journey as a spirit living a human existence. But they also say, if you really don't want to know, don't ask Monique. My background includes a doctorate in metaphysics, Reiki master teacher, ordained minister, and clinical hypnotherapist. So whether you are stressed, depressed, or possessed, I can help. To find out more about me and the services I offer, go to my website. That's MoniqueChapman.com. And I invite you to like and follow me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Don't look for me in Twitter because I am not there. My guest today, Clive Witham, has been researching and using Chinese medicine and the Gua Sha for 20 plus years. He is a licensed acupuncturist and a qualified health educator and has published 5 books on Chinese medicine in 5 languages. As president of the Applied Nanjing Medicine Association, he runs the Gua Sha Center in the Anima Center for Health and Research in Barcelona, Spain. He also is director of the Komoribi Institute and creator of Ecology in Motion Gua Sha, an innovative approach to health and beauty, which he teaches through facial and body Gua Sha programs to students in 32 countries. And you can check him out at his website, and that is CliveWitham.com, CliveWitham.com. Welcome, Clive.
Hello, thank you very much.
Hi, it's so great to have you here. Absolutely love the book. With the Chinese medicine system being so old, why is it coming to the forefront now again?
Well, this is one of the big issues around the times we're living in right now, is because the ideas that were written basically 2,000 years ago and put into these ancient texts in China, they're very much relevant to what's happening right now with the changes that all of us are kind of living through. pretty much environmental, but there's many changes in society that you can pretty much notice if you just watch the news every day. And it's basically because what the ancient Chinese did was that they were kind of trying to categorize universal principles of life. And this is kind of what they codified, and it kind of became ancient Chinese medicine. And they were looking at the environment and nature and how it works and how we interact with it, which is very much the place we find ourselves now in the 21st century, in that I think there's been so much abuse between the relationship between us and nature, which has created a situation where so many people are removed from the whole of the physical nature around them. These principles, these ideas that actually nature is actually within you, which is one of the main Chinese medicine principles, that it really kind of strikes a chord now with how people kind of, the new way of thinking, certainly after COVID, which kind of woke everyone up, and the changes that are happening this year, which of course it's going to be hotter. There's going to be a different kind of weather. There's going to be worse storms, just like it is every year. But if you kind of understand a little bit about what the ancient Chinese were saying about how the motions work in nature, the same motions work in our bodies, and we can kind of understand a great deal from these old texts.
It's truly amazing to me how everything from the past is becoming very relevant. And it's also very interesting that the system was, created, born, however you want to phrase it, 2,000 years ago or more, but we're still dealing with the same disorders, disease. It seems to have gotten worse. Is that because of our lifestyle today with, the food and everything that we do that's not healthy for us?
Well, yes. I mean, there are many things that we kind of grow up within a certain pattern that's kind of built around us, and that's the kind of pattern we follow for the rest of our lives. It doesn't necessarily mean that pattern is one that's going to make your health or maybe perhaps make your body the kind of to live in a certain potential that it should live in. And these kind of problems that kind of come along in your life, generally they're because of a whole bunch of things, which I kind of mention 10 things in the beginning of the book about the kind of things that kind of how to make you thrive in life. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't get these right, and so they don't thrive, and problems appear. So I mean, one of them, of course, is following the basic principles of digestion. I mean, people think that like an acid feeling in the stomach or indigestion, they think it's a kind of normal, but that's actually an illness in itself. It's not normal. You should never have it. But we're kind of like built in such a way that you just have you go to a pharmacy and you get drugs to help you do it, and you don't change your diet. There are many emotional ideas because the ancient Chinese saw emotions as something completely different to how we now see emotions, certainly in the West. They saw emotions as literally motions. They're not things. They're nothing you can actually quantify. They're actually movements in the body. And those movements create certain changes within the body. And if those motions aren't processed within the body, then they kind of get stuck and become actual physical problems stuck within the system of circulation in the body. Hence, emotion can really make you ill, quite literally. And that's often the case with so many people suffering from anxiety and depression. Certain emotions get stuck, and you just can't move them, and it becomes a physical problem. And there are often physical symptoms which perhaps they're arising from it, but also that perhaps they actually were the cause of it. So there's emotions, there's actually living according to your path in life. Now there's a certain way of living that's perfect for your body. I mean, a lot of people kind of get the basic idea of this by the feeling that you have when you go to certain places. So some people love to be by the sea, and they just feel different. There's something about the feeling there, the breeze and the sound. Other people like to be at the top of a mountain and just feel the freedom there. Other people in the forest, and there's a certain place that you feel more at peace in than other places. And that's the basic idea of how the environment kind of puts in something that's missing in you. And if you can kind of work out these missing pieces in you, you can kind of work out the kind of environment that will match your body and bring out the potential within you. And this is one of the reasons why I live in a forest, because I know I quite literally live in the middle of a forest, and know that that here it's the one thing that kind of I always love in life. And if I'm not near a forest, I kind of want to go there, want to visit there at the weekend. And I've never slept better than in my life than living in a forest, and I've been here like 4 years now. And that's just an example of like the path in life. And also it includes about doing a job that will enhance your potential, and being in a relationship that again won't reduce who you are. And this goes on and on and on. Basically, it's the maximization of the circulation patterns in your body, and all of these will do that.
Okay, so you're basically, if I'm understanding correctly, talking about, as you say in the book, the language of nature, paying attention to what makes you feel good, and then being in that environment as much as possible. So say if someone was having, I don't know, some health challenge, and they wanted to receive some relief naturally, if they went to their favorite place, would it help them feel better? Not necessarily cure the dis-ease, but would allow them to feel better, to deal with it, or even think of a way to cure themselves?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not basically the idea of like cure is a particular word that's quite complicated. It's about maximizing the potential of how your body works, and if you're in a certain environment that does that, so that enhances your circulation, then it's only going to be something good. That your body will be encouraged to do. So if you're fighting some kind of a problem in your body, then it's not going to be a negative, it's going to be a positive. Now, how much of a positive? Well, the body's really complicated, and there are a whole load of layers on top of each other. And so this is just one aspect. But this is actually a quite important aspect which kind of underlies everything else. Because if you can get that stability, that foundation of being either on the right path and the right job for your body, then the other things that come later on top, then they're not going to be quite as impactful as they would have been if you weren't.
Okay.
And this also includes like environmental, like in Chinese medicine, there's 5 environmental climates, really, or 6 of them. It's cold and damp and heat and dryness and wind. And this also has quite an impact on your health. So for example, if you live in a place with lots of rain, now I'm thinking in the States, I'm thinking perhaps in the West Coast in the north, somewhere like Portland, Seattle, that is very damp. Then if damp weather, if that dampness, which is actually in your body anyway, if it's something that affects you, if you live there, then it's not a great place for you to live. If you have lots of heat, which is built up in your body, and then you live, for example, in the south, where in a desert environment, then again, it's not perfect for your body. So even in the climate will have an impact on your body, which you may not even notice. But this is another layer on the many other layers of just maximizing your ability to thrive.
Mhm. So how do we get back down to the basics, Clive, of finding out what we are in your system and then making the necessary changes? What is the first step that we really should take? I know in your book, the cornerstone of everything in your book seems to be predicated on breath. So walk me through that,
Yeah.
please.
Well, this is a really beautiful idea. And this is an example of the beauty that really is in Chinese medicine as it was in ancient China. Unfortunately, in modern Chinese medicine, there's been some major changes, especially after the Second World War. After the unification of China and the changes that happened in the 1950s and 60s, which meant that Western medicine and Chinese medicine kind of merged together to create modern traditional Chinese medicine, which has kind of changed how we can see the beauty of Chinese medicine. But if you have a look back at the old texts, then you realize that what the ancient Chinese were doing they were looking, first of all, at the stars. They would call them the heavens. And they were looking at the movements of the stars and how the stars interact with the earth and with our bodies. And we all know how the moon would have an effect on our tides and on the moods, and so that there is this definite there's a definite effect of stuff happening outside of our planet which affect our planet. So there was a basic idea of this, and the idea really was the basic movement of what's happening with the planets and the motions of the universe was a very simple expansion and contraction, which is the kind of the basic idea of how everything works. And so the basic idea of expansion and contraction, pretty much how we breathe, the same idea. So we breathe in and then we breathe out, and that's the expansion and contraction. But we see this pretty much everywhere. I mean, everything expands and contracts. For example, the day expands and contracts between the day and the night. So there's a definite expansion and contraction of like the breath. The year is the same thing. So we have the months of the year, and it's almost like a whole breath of the month of the year. So it's breathing in until the summer and then breathing out, coming to the winter. And so you see this kind of motion of breath on every level of life, everywhere, down to every cell in your body does exactly the same thing. And so the ancient Chinese gave this word, and they called the contraction was yin, and the expansion was yang. And so this was the idea of yin and yang, which is the basic building blocks of how everything moves all around us. And so it's this expansion and contraction, which is one of the universal ideas about Chinese medicine, which is kind of really useful to understand how you kind of bring back this movement to places where it isn't there. So, for example, if you have a really tight shoulder or a tight neck, and you touch it and it feels really hard, that's an example of the breath motion of the tissue. That's the expansion and contraction. Is not properly working. It's getting stuck because the muscle is become tight, and so the circulation patterns going through that area, they're going through absolutely fine, but there's a slight obstruction there. And then if this was going to be left for a long time, there will probably be more problems. So the idea really would be to come to this area and then restore the breath motion to the tissue in that area. And so that's how the basic idea of how you would change things that need changing, using this beautiful idea of the universe.
Okay, well, you talked about something specific, but what about something that's not so specific, like inflammation that can be generalized I guess, all over a body or, in certain places? How would a person work with something that's more general throughout their body?
Yeah, well, general inflammation would be more on the level of like, well, it's heat, the basic idea of heat. So you remember I talked about those environments. So we've got cold, damp, heat, dryness, and wind. And so inflammation is an example of heat happening in the body. And inflammation is something that I used to work with a great deal. And I had a chronic health clinic in North Africa for 11 years. And there so I specialized in people who had, chronic health conditions that often they were often given drugs to take for the rest of their lives, and they didn't really have a solution. And so I would see people who had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome and lupus and many other inflammatory conditions as well, with arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the ways that I'd look at that in the clinic wouldn't really be to think in Western medicine ideas of inflammation, but the idea is to think about, well, that's heat. So heat has been accumulated there, and heat would generally come for a variety of reasons. One of them, of course, is an obstruction. If you think of something getting stuck, imagine like a traffic jam on a freeway, and lots of cars piled up behind with their engines on. It's going to get pretty hot. And so heat often comes with obstruction, but it comes from other things as well. And so the basic idea with that is to remove the cause, or try and remove, often it's very complicated, but try and remove the cause of the heat. And there are certain techniques, or one of them you mentioned at the beginning of one of the things that I often do, which is called gua sha, which is like using a tool to scrape on the skin. And that creates a kind of chain reaction in the tissue, which actually helps to remove heat from the body. And it's really effective at removing heat. And that was one of the things I used quite a lot in my clinic in North Africa to treat people who had quite complicated inflammation. So it wasn't obvious where it came from. It was just kind of all over the place. There were many, many sites of it. And so it was possible to approach it from an angle of just looking, okay, well, let's try and get to the cause of it and not go to all the individual places where you might have the heat.
Okay, so you mentioned a tool. Is that tool necessary, or can someone use their fingertips?
Yeah, so a tool is for gua sha, a tool is necessary, actually. I mean, you can do fingertips is fine for there's a certain technique that you can use for your face, which is improve circulation patterns to your face. But what we'd be interested in, there's a certain action with a tool and the friction that a tool creates in the tissue as you move the tool over your skin. And that action of friction creates a change in the capillary system, the capillary bed, and this is the main action that's going to help to remove the heat. If you didn't have that, so it wouldn't be the same as like if you massaged or if you pushed it with your fingers. It wouldn't be the same thing in regards to inflammation. It's a very different and interesting technique.
Okay. Now, in your book, you have numerous outlines of how to work with different parts of your body in order to facilitate healing. Why don't you pick two and tell us about them?
Okay. Well, let's think. Let's pick something that people might have. So an obvious one would be headaches. So in the book, I talk about 43 different ailments and medical conditions. So headaches is a good one, because headaches, people often think that headaches are in the head, and of course the symptoms, you're feeling them in the head. But most of the time, the problem with a headache is something's gone wrong somewhere else in your body, and it's heading upwards. And that's why you're feeling the symptoms which are in your head. And there are certain clues about headache that kind of tell you a little bit about where the problem might be. And I detail some of this in the book. So if you get a headache which is to the side of your head, lots of people have got headaches at the kind of the temple area, which is like, especially maybe above the eye on one side of the head. And if you kind of understand a little bit about the river system, this is the system of circulation in the body, then you could follow something called the gallbladder river, which it actually starts next to your eye, and it's just referring to the circulation patterns of the blood vessel system in the body, and it goes right over the side of your head, exactly where people have headaches. And so that's pretty much a no-brainer often for, well, where does that headache come from? And it's like, well, okay, we're going to follow the gallbladder river down, and maybe the problem is in the gallbladder river somewhere down the side of your body, or perhaps there's something else which is like affecting the gallbladder river from somewhere else. I mean, another one would be maybe the back of your head. Well, again, you'd look at the river system and then you say, oh, okay, well, that's the bladder that goes over the back of the head. It goes down the back of the whole of your back, right down to your little toe. And so you can kind of use the knowledge of the circulation system in the body to kind of understand where things are coming from. And then that really helps you in order to relieve, really relieve the problem. Because, I could just say, okay, this is the headache point, push this point, which, if you look on Instagram or Facebook, there's plenty of those posts. But that's not really Chinese medicine. That's kind of Western medicine. The idea that there's one point to push and it's going to fix it. Because everyone's headache is pretty much unique. It's coming from their body, and their body is unique. And it's created a certain pattern within their body to create this headache. Now, there's going to be perhaps part of another pattern, which is fairly common, but again, it will be quite unique. And so you really need to approach something, whatever it might be, in this case, it's a headache, looking for the reason and then treating the reason, which will really help, the actual symptoms itself.
The underlying cause. So talk to us about food therapy, because I think that in this day and age, and we know processed food isn't good for us, and all of these negatives around food that food manufacturers put out, but sometimes because of lifestyle or choosing not to take the time, we don't do the right thing. So talk to us about food therapy and how that can help us.
Well, yes. Well, food is a big thing, of course, because certainly in Chinese medicine, the stomach and the pancreas, which are the two main organs which are dealing with digestion, they call them the oceans and the seas, and so that's the most important, massive area of the body. And if that goes wrong, then everything goes wrong. So whatever goes into your digestion is pretty important. And, it's really difficult when you go to a supermarket. And I was in the States for twice in the past year. And I've been in the supermarket and gone around and I'm thinking, my goodness, I mean, it's difficult to find something to eat in a standard supermarket that isn't full of chemicals and processed products. It's a little bit like that here, but it wasn't quite to the extent. It was quite shocking in the States. It seemed to be a lot worse. And so the important thing really about food is I think it's important to step back a little bit with food. And just look at the principles of food, because people can get kind of bogged down into particular foods that you can't have this, you can't have that. And as long as the food isn't, there are certain principles, so not processed, organic, as fresh as possible. So if you can get to those, states of getting fresh food, which hasn't been interfered with, and then you can go into a lot of detail in Chinese medicine, because they worked out a long time ago that when you actually eat food, when it hits your stomach, it creates a temperature inside your body. And so that temperature can kind of change things in your body. So, you might have some food which creates a cold feeling in your stomach. You might have food that creates a heating feeling, and there'll be various combinations of those. And so it depends on your body as to which of these you need more or less of. So you can't just, for example, salad is a very good example. So lots of people think salads are healthy foods, but they're not necessarily, because it depends on when you're eating the salad and if your body needs that coldness coming into the stomach. So, for example, when to have it. I mean, it's probably not a good idea to have salad if you're generally a cold person and it's in winter, because that's not what you need. You need like hot soup, a simple example like that. And certainly with foods, how you cook it is another example of how it slightly changes the nature of the foods. So you've got this whole idea of you can introduce temperature in the body according to what foods you eat. Mm-hmm. But essentially, the most important thing for me really is there are some foods which are kind of food for the soul. And if you just tell someone you just can't have these foods, but maybe they're a food that they're just like, there's something special about that food. So when they have it, it's just like, something happens in the body. And so for me, there are certain food types that you should have them, but you should balance it with sensible choices according to your body and how your body, what your body needs, and how your body can really develop. And it's this whole idea of thriving. And if you can get the right diet for your body, then your body will thrive. And of course, the kind of food that you might buy in a standard supermarket anywhere, generally, most of it is not fit for human consumption, because it's just all the goodness has been taken out of it. But if you can kind of avoid that stuff and come to the freshest food you can find, and then make these sensible choices about temperature, there's also the taste of food. So there's the saltiness or the pungency, and various other types. And so you can go quite deep with food. And I introduce this in the book. And so if you kind of know the kind of foods that would be good for your body, then they're the ones to increase. And the foods that are not so good for your body, they're the ones to decrease, and kind of making a sensible choice. And the key, I think probably the most important thing is about knowledge. And then with knowledge, you can kind of make a sensible decision and not just go from hunches or someone says on the social network. With proper knowledge, then change can happen.
Yes, it can, and to the positive. Now, when we visit your website, CliveWitham.com, that's CliveWitham.com, what are we going to find there?
You're going to find some details about pretty much a lot of talking about gua sha, because this is one of the things I go around and I teach. I do live classes in the States and in Europe. And so I teach that, particularly facial gua sha. And I also do online classes, which again focused on gua sha. And there'll be information about, I have a podcast which has got loads of information and a whole bunch of videos. I try and be as informative as possible, because one of the main techniques included in this book is gua sha, and I try to be as informative as possible with that technique, because it's one of the most interesting techniques from Chinese medicine, because it didn't come from the same places as the other things you might be more familiar with, like acupuncture and Chinese herbs. It very much came from the village level. So it came from the, normally acupuncture and Chinese medicine came through the route of the kind of the upper classes and the ruling classes. And gua sha was coming via basically poor people through the villages as a kind of self-care technique, which was passed down from generation to generation to generation. And it was actually used to fight what was called plague at the time, which is probably cholera, typhoid. And it was using any tool that they could find with any kind of lubricant they could find. And so there was it was almost like it was from the people. And so it's not something that should be taken and then commoditized. And this is why I liked it so much. And so this is and I have a project that's in Sri Lanka, which I try and try and emphasize this whole idea of kind of bringing back to the simple idea of treating with knowledge without the economic incentives of modern medicine. And to try and make an impact on the world scale. So that's the kind of thing that I'm doing, and you'll find more information in my website.
Okay, and folks, see also, don't you have some trainings coming right up?
I do, yeah. So I'm heading to Poland, and then I'm going to take a break for the summer. I'm heading to Sri Lanka, but then I'm coming to the States. I'm coming to Fort Lauderdale, and then I'm flying to San Francisco, and then New York. But then I'm coming back to Europe, to Barcelona, and then Zurich. So I'll be jumping all around the world, giving some live classes. And this is where the thing that I teach is about nature-based Chinese medicine. So I'll be talking about rivers and trees and mountains and what that really means inside your body.
Okay.
I love talking about it.
I can tell. Before we go, why don't you share with us whatever you want to share about the facial uplift that you
sure
are doing.
Yeah, so the facial, so basically it's called facial gua sha, and really I started teaching it. I've been doing it for many years, and I started teaching it because I realized that so many people were doing it, but they didn't kind of have an understanding about what it was. So I then started teaching it and showing people, well, this is what it really is, and that it's not actually the kind of modern beauty technique you think it is. It's not based on like taking away wrinkles or the aging features on your face specifically. It's actually about bringing the inner beauty that's inside everyone, much like a flower that blooms every year. And so the idea is to bring out that flower which is within you and let it shine on your face. And then when that happens, then a lot of these features that lots of people concentrate on, they're less impactful, and people would see the flower, which is the kind of your potential, and they don't see anything else, including you. You see yourself as totally differently. And so this is the kind of my approach to facial gua sha and also to beauty, which I know is rather different from everyone else's.
Yeah, but it's, to me, it's like bringing your own beauty home and letting your own beauty shine, and you're not in competition with whomever's on whatever magazine cover to look a certain way. Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you in writing this book, folks. In the book, there are numerous examples of what you can heal. There are a lot of diagrams. Right now I'm looking at treating the microsystems, the zones in your hand. It's very intriguing, chock full of information. And what I found about it is that it's very easy to understand and easy to implement if you take the time. Clive, we're almost out of time. Please give us words of wisdom regarding your
listen, okay, words of wisdom. Okay, I think my approach basically is basically to take control back with your health, and not let people tell you about what you shouldn't be doing about your own body, which you know really well. And basically one of the aims of the things I do is to give you the tools so you can kind of take back control.
I like that. Tools so you can take back control. So it's never too late, right?
Never too late.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. I greatly appreciate it. I know the audience does too. And everyone, thank you. Please remember that the most important choice that you can make is what you choose to make important. Consider making the masterful choice of discovering self-healing with Chinese medicine. Abundant blessings, light, and love to all. Agape.